Now let's get started on understanding the principles of AgileSHIFT. So primarily there are 5 principles with respect to AgileSHIFT. So they are like changes will happen, so embrace it. The second would be focus on co-creation of customer value early and often. And then develop an environment where everyone adds value. The 4th principle is challenge the status quo. And the 5th principle is tailor your approach. So the principles is nothing but they all must be observed across an organization. So that's the fundamental basis of what we call the AgileSHIFT mindset. So primarily there are 5 principles. It kind of resembles the Agile manifesto to a large extent, and of course it is. So what are these principles, so we can explore further in terms of what are they. So principle 1 was change will happen, and so accept it. So we all know that change should not be kind of a finite process. So they are continuous and must be a continuous process. So when we talk about change, there are 2 aspects to it. There are people and teams who resist the change, and there are people and teams who embrace the change. So change has to necessarily be part of everyone's role. So everyone in an organization will play the role of both RTO, that is run the organization in terms of day-to-day work, and they also have to be the CTOs, change the organization to different extents, of course. The second principle is about focusing on co-creation and customer value early and often. So we know for sure customers, suppliers, vendors, and stakeholders in general, and any others who combine with the organization to achieve optimum value creation. So collaboration and cooperation kind of replaces conflict and confrontation. So this is essentially, we are talking about situations of a silo mentality. The silo mentality can be overcome through aspects of having a collaborative approach and cooperating. So this approach kind of leads to a minimum waste and supports a lean kind of an approach to delivery of products and services. The key message with respect to focus on co-creation of customer value early and often is the global research points to 3 critical factors for any transformational successes that supports the first 2 AgileSHIFT principles. So according to this global research, there are 3 aspects which is critical factors for bringing about transformational success. And invariably, it supports the first 2 AgileSHIFT principles we talked about. So it says focus on the customer, embed an aspect of continual innovation, improvement into the business, and learn to thrive on changes. So these are the 3 research points, which is in way mapping to the first 2 principles, what we talked about, co-creation of customer value early and often. And of course, they're all driven by the changes, so embrace it and accept it. So all those successful companies who have transformed, who have been disruptors, or who have been incumbents of the digital transformations. So the 3 critical aspects are the behaviors or attitudes of them has been the focus on what we call, we call it customer-centric, embedding continual innovations into the business operations, and thriving on the changes, that is adapting the cultural shifts. Then the 3rd principle. So develop an environment where everybody adds value. So that's very critical in today's world. It's always been, actually. So all within an organization must be enabled, like they have to be empowered to add the best value they can to the organization in terms of the products and services. So basically in terms of their roles and responsibilities. So they must be ready to add that value. So work that doesn't support organization objectives is non-value adding work. And that should be eliminated, of course. So if the work is adding value, but not supporting the organization objective, then the objective should be reconsidered, as they may be out of date or incorrect. Then comes challenging the status quo. This is very, very essential. This is an aspect of other frameworks as well, the Lean, the Kaizen, and so many other things. So what does this challenge the status quo means? So we know for all within an organization must be empowered to challenge the way they work, the work they do, the decisions people make, the processes, methods, and systems they use on, the tools and techniques, and of course, they must be empowered to challenge each other. So it's very essential to ask these two important questions. Always be ready to ask why, and always be ready to be asked why. So challenging the status quo is far, far too essential to bring about any transformational change. If you're talking about AgileSHIFT as a framework for transformation change, or any other framework, or in general, any transformational change you want to bring in, you have to primarily challenge the status quo. So that is the way we work, the work we do, the decisions we make based on what, the processes, methods, tools, and techniques we use, and of course, the challenging each other. So that becomes very critical. And then the principle of tailor your approach. So be prepared to find your own ways of bringing about the changes. There is no single best way to work what you do. So identify an appropriate way or ways of working which best suits your tasks, what you perform, the teams you're in, and as individuals, to the context. And of course, context here is the goals, the objectives, what you're driven with. And the scale. Scale is the extent to which you can identify appropriate ways so that you can deliver better results. So what it essentially means is you as an individual, you as working in teams, you as part of a business function, and you as an organization have to take a holistic view of how your organization works. So that's very, very critical. That's very fundamental. So these principles are the guiding principles. They are there every aspect of the organization. So today you have set up goals, and these principles will help you achieve them. So as the organization transcends into the market with different goals and challenges, the principles continue to assist the organization in terms of direction and the conviction. So it's essential that these 5 principles be thought of and adopted at the organization level.